and you are now here with TCM host Ben Mankiewicz and George Chakiris, and Russ Tamblyn will be right back. So I will go ahead and start with Guy at the San Francisco Chronicle. Guy, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, just a clarity. So Russ and George are coming later. Is that?
Nope, George is here right now, and Russ just stepped away for a moment, and he will be right back.
Okay. Well, I'll start with George.
Here's Russ.
That's Russ. That's Russ.
Hi. Hi, this is G. Allen Johnson of the San Francisco Chronicle. Good to see you all here. I just wanted to ask Russ and George, or George and Russ, what it was like working with Rita Moreno, since she's the member of the cast that's not here at the moment.
Well, Rita was incredible. She's a very serious actress to begin with, and it had been a while since she had danced. So I think the main challenge for Rita was to get on board with the dancing, which she absolutely did. But we had such a great time with each other, all of us with each other. And one of the beautiful things about Rita is her sense of humor. And so we laughed a lot. We played a lot between takes and so on. And so the camaraderie between all of us was just quite joyous and really, really wonderful. But she was, I worked with Rita in the theater version of something some years later. And she approached everything, well, I'll say with that Stanislavski type method, where the actor studio kind of method. She approached everything she did and anything she ever did that way. So of course she was doing that on West Side, but her accomplishments as a dancer were just quite extraordinary, and she was just great fun to be with. Period.
And I didn't get a chance to work with Rita. That's my experience with her. Except for, I guess, in the dance hall, we were both worked in that, but we were also busy dancing and doing our thing. We didn't really have a chance to get together too much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Danielle, I will go ahead and call on you next. Go ahead and ask your question. This is Danielle from Salty at the Movie, and she doesn't have a hand raise feature, so that's why I'm calling on her seemingly out of turn.
Right. Thank you for being here. My question is, what was it like to work alongside Natalie Wood in this film? And did Spielberg call on you for the new film coming out this year?
Well, working alongside Natalie was terrific. She was darling. She was friendly. And by the way, I think when we talk about Natalie today, I think it's key to try to remember that when we were doing West Side Story, she was 23. Okay, so we can forgive anybody anything when it happens that long ago, but we don't have to forgive her for anything because she was perfect. She was gregarious. She was fun. She was intelligent. She was really engaging with us. But one of the things that I've always loved about Natalie in West Side Story and in anything she ever did was what I call her personal quality. And I think an actor or an actress's personal quality is something additional that we feel or don't feel about someone when you see them on the screen. Audrey Hepburn, great personal quality and so on. But Natalie actually had that extraordinary personal quality. And I'm reminded of what a wonderful actress Natalie was as a kid. And you could see as a however old she was when she first started, she was very young, but you could see her gift as an actress even when she was quite young. So again, working with Natalie to me was great. And I remember the first time I saw her, I remember thinking, wow, what a face. What a beautiful, beautiful face. You can't film that face badly, no matter how, even if you try. But she was To me, she was glorious. I really loved her.
And I did not get a chance to work with Natalie. So
Yeah, you missed all those scenes.
yep. But I did. I thought the last scene in West Side Story, I thought Natalie just did an incredible job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I'd known her for years and years before West Side Story. I probably knew her for 10 or 20 years before the film. We were friends and used to hang out together with Dennis Hopper and
So,
and
let
RJ.
let me ask Russ. Let me ask you then, because you know better than anybody. Then it's so hard to make that transition from a child star, successful child star like Natalie was, into an adult star. And what was it that makes someone like Natalie succeed at?
Well, certainly, getting that part in West Side Story, I tested with. I tested for the part of Tony, not for the part of Riff. They offered me the part of Riff, but I tested for Tony, and I tested with a lot of actresses, like, well, just lots of them, and then finally, I think it was the last minute. I think that Bob Wise was looking at Splendor in the Grass to. He was checking out Warren Beatty, and while he was checking out Warren Beatty is when he discovered Natalie and thought, my God, she might be great for for the part of Maria, and so that's how she got it. And I think that the Steven Spielberg project is going to be interesting because. They actually got a Puerto Rican girl that could sing, and they didn't have to have singing for her, and evidently she's quite good. She was also a Broadway performer, and I'm looking forward to seeing Spielberg's version. And my hunch is, a lot of people say, well, do you think it's going to be better or worse or what? And I said, I think my own guess at it, I haven't seen a frame of the film, of Spielberg's film, but I did go to the set and visit him, and he was extremely generous. And none of the jets were working that day, but when they heard I was coming, they all came to the set anyway, and we had lunch together, and they were just terrific. And I loved them, and I thought, and I can't wait to see the movie and see what he's done with it. And what I believe is that there are going to be things in it that are going to be better, believe it or not, because I know a lot of people have said, oh, our film was perfect and you can't get any better than that. But my hunch is that there are going to be some things that are going to be better in it, and some things that are going to be worse, or not be as well. But we'll see what happens. Steven Spielberg's a great, the most successful director and producer and filmmaker in Hollywood. So I don't think he can go too far wrong. He's got a lot of great people that were working on the film, and a lot of Broadway performers. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And of course, Rita, seeing her play the doc in it is going to be pretty amazing. She's also an executive producer of it. Yeah. So she has nothing but high praise. Yeah. Said it's a wonderful movie.
I'm looking forward to it, and I absolutely totally expect that Steven Spielberg will do something wonderful. But then back to your point of a child actor or actress developing into an adult performer, it depends on how they grow up and how they physically grow up as well. Two good examples, I think, of two actresses who grew up to be perfect as adults as well, Natalie and Elizabeth Taylor. They're two great examples of someone who started as a kid, but developed into something really remarkable and totally could still be cast as adults in films as well, because they grew up to be pretty great looking as well. Not just that, they had gifts and talent, but their physical appearance was made a tremendous difference. So it's how a young actor or actress develops over time.
Yeah, they weren't bad looking. You're right. It's a fair point, George.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Jim at Real Talker, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey fellas, so I'm going to kind of stay on that topic of sort of the remake and reboot. How do you feel about films such as yourself, where the West Side Story, where it's been around for 60 plus years in that essence, and it being in a sense tinkered with? Is there like a protective feeling of what you created initially, or are you excited to see a vision and a version for a completely new age and a new generation who's probably maybe grandparents were originally there for it in a lot of ways, and seeing it be done in this new society in a way? Is that something that's exciting for you to kind of see something that you were originally part of, or you don't want it maybe tinkered with and kind of leave it as it was there and just have that one version? How do you personally feel about it? I'm gonna start with you, George, and then Russ.
Well, I think it's absolutely fine to have the version that has existed and to respect it. And of course, to respect what Spielberg is doing as well. There's room in the world for both of these, or more, if you like. There's nothing wrong with a remake or a remake and so on. The thing that's important to me is nothing to do with me, but I think that in all of this, I would like to see that the people who actually created West Side Story to begin with in the theater in 1957, I'd like us to not forget that that's how it started. No one would have a project today if Jerry Robbins and his team hadn't done this to begin with. That has opened the door to remakes, if you like. But the original piece that it was created, that's the piece that made the difference, I think.
Yeah, and I think that they're not in competition with each other.
No, not at all. No.
Any more than the Star is Born movies, you know? I mean, they made one with Judy Garland, and they made another one, then they made another one. I think they've made 4 versions of A Star is Born now. And so I don't think that they compete with each other. Maybe people look and say, oh, well, that one was better, but I don't know.
Well, I think
it would be real interesting.
I think it's absolutely natural that people will draw comparisons. That's inevitable, and that's just fine. But just draw comparisons, and there's room certainly for the one that has been existed all this time, and for what Spielberg is doing as well. There's absolutely room for all of this.
It's going to be a little different. I mean, I know, because and Spielberg told me. One of the things I joked to him about, I said, you know, Steven, I said, one of the things I always thought was when Tony comes in to find Maria, and he comes into that apartment buildings there, and he yells out, Maria. And I said, I was shocked that like girls didn't come out from every single apartment, because they're all named Maria. I thought that would have been, and he said, well, wait till you see our movie. So he did a lot of that. He changed a lot of things like that should be really interesting. And I'll be really curious to see what he did with America Number, because Spielberg said he spent like 2 or 3 weeks shooting that number, whereas George did that amazing version on the rooftop. He shot it all over the city, in different parts of the city. He shot it. So, you know, there's a lot of things like that that'll be new and different. But of course, like George has always said, we did the blueprint. You know, we did the beginning, the original, and it's going to be. It'll be interesting. I'm sure it'll be a major, big career and big premiere, and look forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey Howard at Vegas Film Critic, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everybody. Jeff Howard, KCLV TV in Las Vegas. Hey, Ben, good to see you again.
You as well.
This question is for Russ and George. Take me back to the original film and tell me about a typical day of rehearsal for the dancing. And also, when it was time to shoot the sequences, do you have a memory of which was the most difficult or the easiest? Or
Well, I remember, we rehearsed at Goldwyn Studios, it was called at the time, here in Los Angeles. And it was a huge rehearsal hall there. And we would all show up for work. Everybody would come in at whatever time it was, 9 or 9:30, to be ready for 10, give or take. We would warm up, we'd have a coffee, and then we would do a class. We would do a warm up before Jerry got there. After the class, again, a quick coffee break. And then what I remember was that when Jerry arrived, and he arrived smiling, he wasn't fierce or anything like that. He was just calm and arrived. But when he arrived, just his presence, I think, made a huge difference to how everybody felt, because there was something of, I'm, Ben, you must be so sick of me hearing you say this stuff, but there really, I keep going back to him all the time, because to me it's his creativity, his perfectionism and all of that, but just who he was as a person and as a creative person. He was a perfectionist with all of us, but with himself first. And it must have been really difficult for him. I wrote a book of different books about him, and we all focus on how difficult he was, and we don't stop to think, I don't think, enough of what he was like with himself. And I think that's important. Anyway, so Jerry would come in and we would rehearse, have a lunch break, and we rehearsed the whole day, just rehearse. And that's what a day was like for rehearsal. And then that prepared us for the filming, and everybody, the rehearsals, it was like rehearsing for anything, the theater. The rehearsal process is what helps you find your way, helps you build your strength for movement and so on. So it prepares you for the actual filmmaking itself. So rehearsal is obviously very important, and it was strong. It was constant, and there was quite a lot of rehearsal before any of the filming took place.
One of the things that we did during rehearsals is we went down to downtown Los Angeles early in the morning, and we had a truck with a piano on the back of it that our accompanied us and would play the music, and we would dance up and down the streets in Los Angeles. So that kind of got us used to, not only did it get us used to dancing outside, but Jerry Robbins and Bob Wise would sit in the back of the truck with a viewfinder and watch us dance, and I guess they were trying to get to feel what it was like too, because it's pretty hard to get great dancing out on the street. I think Gene Kelly was probably the first one to do it and on the town dancing in New York. So it makes a big difference, because when you're outside, all the buildings take they take over a lot of advantage. It's not like doing it on a set where you are just concentrate on the dancers. Well, I thought that was pretty interesting. And of course, when we got to New York, we changed a lot of the steps because of the location, because of the streets of running and jumping and hopping over each other. So that part, a lot of it was added in after that.
Well, Russ, I remember when we were rehearsing at Goldwyn Studio, just like you would tape out certain sections the way you would in the theater, a room, a chair, a door, or whatever. It's all taped on the floor, so you knew the space that you had to work in. And I'm assuming that before filming ever started, that all the location work had been done, so that they knew exactly where they would film a particular section of the dancing. But it was all of that was, as far as I could tell, was of course planned, and of course you have to plan it to save time so you don't waste time and you know where you're going. But everything was all those streets that they had found the locations for. All those things had been measured and were taped out on the floor, so that we knew the space that we had to dance for that section, for a certain section to work in that space, whether it was down the street or against a wall or whatever it was. All of that had been they found by scouting their locations before filming ever started. So that was an advantage, and of course it was a smart thing to do. It's a movie, and you have to, everybody does that before filming ever starts. Anyway, enough said from me. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim at Real Talker, go ahead and ask your question.
This one's for Ben and Taryn and George and Russ. You can jump into that. But I'm curious about today's state of, in a sense, movies like West Side Story, musicals. Obviously, the golden era seemed to be like in the 50s and 60s, where a lot of these classics, in a sense that we're talking about, really started up. But what is kind of the future? I mean, we had La La Land a few years back that was up for Academy Award, but I feel like there isn't that sense of movies like musicals like that being sort of big movies, big anticipated. Maybe this year with this reboot and Into Heights might kind of bring it back. But I'm curious, Ben, where do you see kind of musicals in today's day and age? And is there still a place for them really to be kind of the big kind of releases and big talked about movies to become future classics?
Well, first of all, let me just say, because you're asking about, could there be a movie like West Side Story? There's a movie so much like West Side Story that it's called West Side Story, right? And so and I think that's one of the great things about it is here we're seeing this, we're seeing the most successful filmmaker of all time. He can make any movie he wants to in the world at any time. He can do whatever he wants. Right? He wants to make a Star Wars type movie, Indiana Jones type movie. He wants to make Jaws 8. He can do it. Nobody can say no to him. And what did he choose to do? He chose to make this musical, West Side Story, the movie that starred these two guys, starred Rita. That was his choice. So that's a great sign for musicals going forward. And that's why this talk about should there be a remake or not? Of course there should be a remake. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it reinvigorates the idea of a musical. It gets us talking to these guys, it gets you excited about seeing the original. So I think it's wonderful. And you mentioned In the Heights and you mentioned La La Land. And look, the business has changed dramatically. There aren't, I sat and I watched a Tommy Lee Jones movie that I can't even remember the title of, because it was a French production, Dave Robichaud, the James Lee Burke's character, and it was a 2009 film, and it seemed like a movie that had been made in the 90s. It's good, because Tommy Lee Jones was really good in it, and you're reminded John Goodman's in it, and you're reminded that there aren't a lot of movies that we got used to that aren't made anymore, and what seems like the bulk of advertising dollars, the bulk of production dollars, they go into superhero movies, right? And so the business is constantly changing. Musicals are hard, and the vibrance and energy that you get on the stage, where the audience can literally feel their chairs shaking, right, is different in the movie. So you have the energy, to me, in a movie musical has to be 10 times what it was on the stage to get that feeling conveyed through a screen. So they're hard, and movies are expensive. So there are fewer of them, but man, they keep showing back up, right? So they're not going away. They showed up here with West Side Story in the Heights, and they'll show up again. They're never gone for good, because when they're done well, there's nothing better.
Well, Ben, too, movies, there's been a transitional kind of thing in terms, for example, in the 40s and the 50s and so on, MGM, the great movie musicals with Arthur Freed, and musical stars under contract that they would create movies for, Betty Grable at Fox and so on. So they found projects for those musical stars, and there were more musical films in that time than there are now. Now I think it's a rare kind of occasion and a rare circumstance that can still bring us, thank God, can still bring us musical films, but not in the same, not as many as there were in prior decades.
Yeah, you remember, right? I mean, Arthur Freed ran that musical unit at MGM. So,
Yeah,
I mean, they were ready to go
Yeah,
constantly. Everybody's under contract, they're ready to crank it out, and then when they were done with that, they could make another one. So
Yeah, and-
that era is gone. Yes.
yeah. And also, again, because you had these stars under contract. Again, I'll say Betty Grable just as an example. So of course, Zanuck had to find project for her. So there were more musicals thanks to her being under contract and being a very, very famous music. She was the highest paid person in the world at the time. But to find something for Betty Grable meant that you were doing more movie musicals thanks to what was going on at the time, and you had musical stars under contract.
Thank you. Okay, Guy at San Francisco Chronicle, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, this is for all three of you. First of all, let me start by saying I really love West Side Story and always will. But there is, in the last year, people discussing older movies and how they've gotten some cultural things wrong, culturally inappropriate. Ben, you were part of the hosting of that series Reframed, which was a great series, and Russ, you mentioned that now they have an actual Puerto Rican woman playing Maria in this one, and other actors. So for the fellows who were in the film, what's your reaction to this kind of reassessment? And Ben, how should we think of the 1961 West Side Story today?
I'll let these guys go. These guys go first. They're more important.
Listen, movies over the years, over the decades, how people cast and all of that is a thing in today's world. Black Lives Matter and all of that. There's so much more that we've been brought to be aware of just as a society that is important. And so that kind of thinking spreads into everything that we do, whether it's a film or whether it's a sculpture, whatever it is, that affects how people also have to deal and have to deal with that particular piece. There's another influence that comes in that in my way, I think in some way confines the artistic process, because you have to pay so much attention to the political process. It's hard to make those things work together. It's possible, but I do think it makes it a little trickier. For example, and by the way, one of the examples that I try to bring about once in a while is casting. Russ mentioned this girl who's playing Maria being Puerto Rican. By the way, she's not Puerto Rican. She's Hispanic, but she's not Puerto Rican. It doesn't matter. But for example, Zorba the Greek, Anthony Quinn, a Mexican actor playing a Greek. Is that wrong? No, he was fantastic. Who else could have done that other than, my point is, these kinds of liberties are important to be able to use if you can. In today's world, if somebody was redoing Zorba the Greek, would there be an outcry? Oh no, you can't do that to Greeks. It's more in other areas of culture. It's more into the African and Hispanic and all, and those areas. We're not bothered by the other. I'm not putting it so bad, but this kind of casting is always influenced by our lives and our society as it happens, and we can't. I don't think we can go back and criticize anything that's happened before. We can criticize it and correct it and hope that we move on from there. But I don't think it's fair to expect people to redo everything and make it politically correct, because we lose so much in the process. We just have to respect society, history, and all of that, and allow things to be what they were and what they are and what they will continue to be, because it's all relevant and it's all worth watching, I think, pretty much.
Russ, you want to jump in before I waste everybody's time?
I forgot what the question was.
Yeah, I talked too long, sorry.
No. It was a good answer, George. No, you talked about the question about the the white actors were cast in the Puerto Rican roles, and now there's been a reassessment, an overdue reassessment of that across the country. And you were the one who brought it up earlier that there is a Latina actress coming in to play Maria, and just your thoughts on that conversation that we're having.
Well, what's that? I hear a phone ringing.
Yeah. No, we were all hearing that. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to guess, but I do think it's I do think it's an improvement. If they can find a Spanish or Puerto Rican girl to play Maria, I mean, that's obviously an improvement. I mean, outside of her not being a big star like Natalie Wood was, so it's got to be an improvement. I would venture to guess. I mean, obviously it is. If you find somebody that can do that. So I don't. And I think it's the same thing with a lot. Rita brought up a bunch of questions about how Puerto Ricans are all different shades of color, and that in our movie they made everybody the same. They made everybody the same color. Everybody darker. So, but I understand why they did that too. They made people darker because so you could tell the difference between the Jets and the Sharks. So I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Spielberg movie turns out. And I'm glad that we got to do this and be the choice for the opening of the TCM Film Festival. I think that's quite an honor. And
well, we're thrilled that you agreed to help us do that. It was the most logical choice in the world to have the 60th anniversary of West Side Story be the opening night at this festival this year. And I'll just say quickly that, look, this is what we, context matters. And we've been, saying for 27 years at TCM, starting with Robert Osborne in 1994, that the context matters. So taking these movies and putting them in their proper cultural context, their proper political context, their proper Hollywood context, that's what we do. And obviously part of the issue in all these films, and it's particularly notable when we've taken marginalized communities and either marginalized the characters or had white actors come in to play those characters in communities that have been marginalized by mainstream society. So that's obviously a problem that we have to fix, as evidenced very clearly by the fact that it's our opening night movie. Nobody at TCM is saying that these movies shouldn't be seen, but putting them in that context and talking about that whitewashing that went on, that's a critical part of making sure that these movies stay part of this national conversation that we're having. And obviously everybody here at TCM, from the management of Warner Brothers straight down through to everybody working here in the studio with me and all the hosts, want to make sure that these movies stay part of this national conversation that we're having about race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. We think that's critical, and we think the movies can help us grow and help us learn by being very clear and frequently entertaining examples of where we came from, and frequently egregious examples of where we came from. The movies can play an important role, and we want to be part of helping us grow as a society and understand that.
There's this thing going on now called cancel culture. And I just wonder how that's going to affect a movie like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. In fact, I wonder how they ever made that movie, to tell you the truth, because whoever went to MGM and said, I got a great idea for a musical. It's based on the rape of the rape of the Sabine women. And it's all about these guys that come in and take these women back up to the mountains and rape them. And that'll be a great musical. I'm just absolutely amazed how that ever got to be made into and then somebody said, yeah, that's a great idea for a musical comedy. Why not? always
Well,
thought
I
that
mean, but
really,
that's just it. I mean, Russ, that's a great point. That's what
Yeah.
that's what we hope this Reframe series does, is make people think about that. And at the same time, you can think about it and you're still quite capable of enjoying this, this artistic magistry that comes out of watching Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But you understand the context. And I think that can, the mere fact that that movie got sort of made and sold in the manner that it did can
Yeah.
tell you a lot about where we were in 1954. We like to tell ourselves a story about the country and about where we were that sort of romanticizes how forward thinking we always were. But well, we weren't. And the movies are a living, breathing example of that. And I'd see them as such enormously valuable teaching tools going forward, in part because they're so entertaining. So I think that that TCM is going to play a big role in that, and we're eager and proud to play that role.
I'm waiting for the new version to come out, the Mormon version called Seven Brides for One Brother.
I'm going to leave that one alone, Russ. That one.
Ben, just very quickly, Russ, in that story, in the movie itself, the girls were not raped. That was softened and changed so that they were not
Yeah,
raped.
well,
It
yeah.
was all politically correct.
No, thanks to Jane Powell, she stopped
Well,
them.
no, thanks to the writers. And she's wonderful, of course.
Well,
But it was the way it was written.
what the writers did is they made Jane Powell, keep all the brothers when they brought them up and said, all right, but you're going to have to sleep in the barn. But, but the actual story that it was based on was the rape of the Sabine women.
Yeah, but that was not the story that we saw. The stuff we saw was not the
That's right.
actual story. It was softened by the girls not being raped. Sorry to spoil this.
Well, yes, that's very true. But I think they've done that with probably a lot of movies where they've softened it and.
Well, movies today, that no question, that's certainly true. Sometimes for the wrong reasons too.